Can you hear me okay? Yes. It is wonderful to be here in the Bay Area and to discover that wherever it is, Nancy Pelosi gets her ideas, it is not from her constituents. But I have some bad news for you. Last night I spoke in San Luis Obispo on why we should impeach Dick Cheney. And the night before that, it was a speech in Ventura on why we should not dump another $178 billion into the occupation of Iraq and why we should impeach Dick Cheney. But on the drive up here from San Luis Obispo this morning, I had a long conversation with someone who began to change my mind. I confess that I had prior to today not given proper consideration to how impeaching Dick Cheney could backfire, namely by turning Dick Cheney into a figure of sympathy. You laugh, but imagine if we held impeachment hearings on Cheney's support for torture. For example, this could involve dragging across television screens and newspaper front pages accounts of meetings in which Cheney and his lawyer and his close associates discussed and dramatized and gave approval for specific acts of torture, including some very intense and in some cases probably sexual acts of torture performed on some very exotic and thrillingly frightening evildoers. The personal pleasure that Dick Cheney may have derived from these torture approval sessions is as private an affair as some past presidents' oral sexcapades, and sticking the public's nose where it doesn't belong is likely, I now realize, to result in comparisons being drawn between the victimization of Dick Cheney and that of Princess Diana. Or imagine if we were to hold impeachment hearings that meticulously lay before the public the lead role Cheney played in fabricating a false case for attacking Iraq. Americans admire a strong work ethic, and Cheney worked very long hours for many months without a break, relentlessly badgering the CIA, the Pentagon, Congress, the media. And we put him to all of that trouble because of our predictable failure to understand the need to attack Iraq for the reasons that Cheney and his friends had so straightforwardly presented in the papers of the Project for a New American Century. If we had supported the real reasons, Cheney would never have had to go to all that trouble to invent fake ones. So now guilt may begin to set in, which will only add to the sympathy we feel for Dick Cheney. And remember that when certain busybodies exposed some of Cheney's laboriously constructed lies, he was forced to go to even more trouble, to destroy their careers or expose their wives as secret agents. Do you think that was pleasant? Do you think Cheney enjoyed exposing a CIA agent? This is the same man who is presently constructing a multi-million-dollar home in Virginia just a few minutes walk from the headquarters of the CIA. Don't you think he'd prefer to get along with the neighbors and not have been caused all that grief? So imagine the sympathetic figure Dick Cheney might become if impeachment hearings examined where his millions of dollars came from, profiting from a company to which he had directed no bid contracts for the work of pretending to reconstruct the nation he had just destroyed. So now I take my friend's criticism very seriously. Impeachment, I now see, might very well backfire. In fact, I think it might go even worse. Along with Dick Cheney, we might very well turn John McCain into a figure of sympathy. An impeachment hearing on torture, for example, would bring back into the news that unfortunate incident in which Cheney lobbied Congress not to absurdly and redundantly recriminalize torture, but McCain lobbied successfully to do it. Bush signed the bill into law and added a little signing statement, drafted by Cheney's lawyer, that said effectively, we'll torture if we want to, and we'll start with you, John McCain, if you make a peep about it. Okay, didn't really say that last bit. But from that point on, John McCain became a supporter of torture. Imagine if the media were forced to drop its fascistic fetishes with flag pins and religions and instead ask John McCain if he would tolerate torture as president, and how a supposed victim of torture who used to condemn it as evil and as useless can justify that. And if he can justify that, how can there possibly be anything that he cannot justify? So if those mean reporters make John McCain scream or cry, he might not stand a snowball's chance in hell of becoming president, but he'll be a figure of sympathy. I feel sorry for the poor gutless murdering bastard myself already. And you know who else I feel sorry for? And seriously, I feel sorry for Nancy Pelosi, because she has Shirley Golub and Cindy Sheehan to contend with, and the rest of you. So when you get your so-called economic stimulus tax rebate check, sign it over to one or both of those candidates. Right in the memo line for impeachment. Don't mail it yet. Photocopy it. Send the photocopy to Nancy Pelosi and to the newspapers, and then send it to the candidates. Almost 3 years ago, on May 1st, 2005, the Downing Street minutes were published, and a lot of us worked for a year, about exactly a year, together with John Conyers, pushing for impeachment. Well, we were pushing for impeachment. Conyers may have just been pushing for our votes to make him a chairman and give him a larger office. Because guess what happened in the first week of May 2006? Actually, two things happened, but I've come to think of them as one. First, the Republican National Committee released a statement announcing that any talk of impeachment would backfire and benefit Republicans in the 2006 elections. This statement did not even pretend to be based on any evidence and flew in the face of every relevant poll. In fact, as it turned out, a poll not long before the November 06 elections found that a majority of Americans believed that giving the Democrats a majority would mean impeachment. And what happened? Americans gave the Democrats 30 new seats and the Republicans not a single one. Or possibly 40 or 50 more seats if we had elections that, are based on how many people voted for the candidates. So the RNC's announcement looked like a bluff and turned out to be baseless. But I forgot to mention the second thing that happened that first week in May 2006. Nancy Pelosi announced that impeachment was off the table in obedience to the Republican National Committee. And from that moment on, John Conyers' position on impeachment has paralleled John McCain's on banning torture. But the movement for impeachment has grown anyway. With leaders in Congress, including Dennis Kucinich, call his office in Washington every morning and ask him, can you please introduce the articles of impeachment you have drafted against George W. Bush? Yeah. And leaders including Robert Wexler. Yeah. Robert Wexler from Florida, who is organizing within the Judiciary Committee to push Chairman Conyers to impeach, to start impeachment hearings for Dick Cheney. Those supporting impeachment to some degree include Barbara Lee, include Lynn Woolsey, include more recently Pete Stark. But ask them to lobby their colleagues, to talk to the media, to introduce articles of impeachment.